The Important Part was recorded on February 5th, 2024. This podcast is sponsored by SoFi and is for informational purposes only and should not be deemed a recommendation. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the institutional views of SoFi or its affiliates.
Before we start this episode, quick announcement. I want to let you all know that we're going to be taking a few months off, mostly because I am going on maternity leave. I am becoming a mama. So we're going to take a few months off. We're going to go back to the drawing board, figure out how to make this even better for you when I return. In the meantime, we're going to be re-releasing some of our favorite episodes, and we'll be back later this year.
There's no shortage of information that can impact the way you invest, and I'm here along with my guests to get to the important part. I'm Liz Thomas, host of, you guessed it, The Important Part, Investing with Liz Thomas. As head of investment strategy at SoFi, I share insights and perspectives that cover everything happening in the world of money. Now let's get to it. My guest today is Brandon Copeland. Brandon's voice might sound familiar to a few of you because he was on The Important Part back in 2021. He is one of my favorite guests ever, and I am so happy he's back. Brandon played 10 years in the NFL. Now he's retired and focuses on helping people work towards financial freedom. He's an Ivy League professor who teaches a class at his alma mater, UPenn. Among many other impressive accolades, he just released a new book called Your Money Playbook: How to Earn More, Build Wealth, and Win at Life. The book is out now. Brandon, welcome back to The Important Part. I am so excited to have you here, and biggest congrats on your new book.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is called Your Money Playbook: How to Earn More, Build Wealth, and Win at Life. And it's separated into 4 sections, which you call quarters. I'm sure everybody can figure out the connection there. Every chapter begins with a huddle. I thought that was really cute too. So this metaphor works. Obviously, we hear a ton of sports metaphors in finance. We talk about it all the time in investing. I love a sports metaphor just as much as anybody else. But walk us through, first of all, the genesis of the book. I had the pleasure of reading the intro, and it's obviously a very personal book to you too. So walk us through the genesis. What is your goal with this book? Why is it important to you?
Well, one, thank you again for having me on to discuss it. I always appreciate you bringing me onto the platform. The genesis of the book is when you're educating people. For me, I'm always looking for new ways to engage the audience, right? And whether that be through video, whether that be through comedy, whether that be through starting a class with a song that is talking about the topic for the day. I'm always looking for new ways to actually captivate, engage with, and deliver information to my students. But then also everything that I do is also to be scaled and to be offered to the world beyond the classroom at Penn. I've always wanted to make sure that along with the conversation that we have in the classroom, we also have some real text to go with it. And I've always had to look outside of what I've created to try to find things that are applicable to the conversation at hand, whether it be budgeting, investing, legacies, estate planning, et cetera, et cetera. And so the next evolution in my own journey was to challenge myself and to write a book to really make the conversation about money even more relatable, even more digestible. And as you mentioned, by just going through the intro, you were able to see that there's been an evolution of me personally to unlearn some of my own past trauma around money to get my mind out of survival mode and into thrive mode, so to speak. And so anyway, I'm excited to share more about myself and what's brought me to this point through the book. But I'm also really, really excited for readers to be able to take it, digest it. And frankly, a buddy of mine, I got him an advanced copy. And one of the things he said was like, man, this isn't an easy read. And at first I was like, oh man, that doesn't sound good. He was like, no, not a bad thing. It's like, at first I was reading this thing and I'm thinking like, oh, this is going to be a little simple, cushy book, so to speak. But I had to like literally turn off the TV, turn off music, sit down. I bring out my notebook when I'm reading this book. And I'm also bringing out my laptop at times to actually go and use it and apply the lessons that, you're talking about in it, right? And so, we worked really, really hard on this. And I always say we, because I don't do anything by myself. It's a team effort. If I'm able to spend time writing a book, and that means there's somebody else, whether it be my family, my wife, my business partner, my brother, my co-professor, somebody else that's picking up my slack, so to speak, elsewhere, that gives me the ability to do it. But when we decided to write the book, we worked with our students at Penn and literally have been testing it for years and just working on tweaking it. And the first time we did the test a couple of years ago, I had to look at myself at the end of the semester. I was like, yeah, we talked about a lot of stuff, but did we actually give actionable advice that you could execute on today, that you could go and apply to your life as soon as you put the book down? And the answer at that time was no. So we went back in the booth, so to speak, and we retooled it and reworked it. And now we've brought it back to life. And that's why we made sure that the wording of the title was extremely intentional. We want this to be a playbook. We want this to be something that you can take and use and go change your life tomorrow for the better, if you choose to do so.
Well, I love that. I love that you have a book that you can use as a textbook almost, but it's more applicable, right? I love that you have something that you can use that's practical for those students. And look, it shouldn't be a mindless beach read. This is about your finances. You have to take it seriously. And it does require a lot of thought, and it requires a lot of deliberation, and it requires a lot of planning. So I hope that it inspires people to look stuff up and learn more and get motivated. So I'm really happy to hear that. And I'm really excited to read it myself. What would you consider your role as if this were a football team, if this book were a football team? Ooh. What's your role? Are you a player on this team? Are you the coach on this team? Are you the GM? Are you what are you doing on this team? Are you the quarterback?
Yeah, this is going to be a cop-out answer to some, but it's the actual truth. I'm the player, coach, GM, owner. I am doing everything, literally. And the reason why I say that is because, like, all the things in the book are things that I am actively either continuing to evolve or continuing to check into. And they are literally the steps that I've taken to get to where I'm at. But my own fuller development and understanding of them as well, too, so that I can make sure I deliver it to the audience. So this is not a book that is just like, hey, these are all the things I did. Boom, it's in the past. Let me go give it to you now and move on. These are things that, like, I'm meeting with my financial advisor literally later on today. And then I have my quarterly financial meeting tomorrow with the broader team. And my wife and I are going through all these things ahead of our third child to make sure that we're on track with it all. So again, I hope that's not a cop-out answer, but I am a coach. I'm also the GM, but I'm also the player that's now re-looking at the book and saying, hey, remember what you said on page 147? Like, are you doing that today? Are you looking yourself in the mirror? Can you say that your estate plan is in order? Have you updated it already? Those types of things as well, too. So,
and I'm glad you mentioned seeing a financial advisor, because let's take a little caveat there and talk about it, because I think there's probably people listening who would be surprised to know that you have a financial advisor. It's like, don't you know enough about how to manage your money? What do you need an advisor for? I have a financial advisor, and people would ask me the same thing. What do you need that for, right? Isn't this what you do for a living? But yes, it is. There are a lot of things about finances that I don't do for a living and that I'm not a specialist in. Taxes is one of them. Estate planning is one of them. There are a number of other things. Plus, there's that element of, at least for me, remove the emotion from it. And we try so hard to do it ourselves, but you just can't take all of your emotion out when it's your own money. So the advisor is a nice way, at least for me, to gut check. Sometimes I'll call and say, this is what I'm thinking about doing. This is what I want to do. But you tell me if you would do that if you were in my shoes, right? But I think, explain to our listeners what is the value add for you to have an advisor?
Yeah, I think one, there's multiple reasons, but one, I went 8.5 years in the NFL without having an advisor. And at a certain point, I looked around and I started to say, hey, I probably need to make sure that I'm working with a pro, so I'm not guessing on some of these decisions anymore. And I would always have conversations with people to to confirm or validate my own thinking. And so whether you have an advisor or not, I'd strongly suggest that, whether you find, accountability buddies or neighbors or a group of friends that you just have these conversations about. Same way you're talking about your fantasy football draft. Let's talk about what our retirement accounts are looking like, or what we're saving up for, what we want our lives to look like 5 years from now. But by me, I ended up getting an advisor because I wanted somebody who was all day, every day thinking about money. And I'd rather them also be thinking about money and financial situations that are larger than mine so that they can be structuring my stuff in the best way possible. And now it gives me more time to go free myself up and go do other things to go earn money. On top of that, it also removed a certain amount of anxiety around money for me, because I always have this fear of like, am I making the right decision? Am I going to be the NFL player that messes this whole thing up as well too? Right. Like, and so when you are making those decisions by yourself, it's not that I'm paying an advisor just to remove myself and rid myself of that anxiety, but you want a professional working on your behalf whenever you have the opportunity to do so. And so that's that I had to remove my ego from the equation and go work with folks who have been there, done that before, and are now proactively calling me about opportunities as well too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so important. And it's one of the things I talk about with listeners a lot and with any audience is just that no matter how experienced you are, you still make mistakes. You're still susceptible to those same biases, those same shortfalls. And it's important, I think, for us to remind people that even though I've been doing this for 20 years, you're a voice of authority on this topic, and still we need help to make sure that we stay in line. So I think that's great. All right, let's talk about the 4 quarters. The first quarter in the book is about budgeting. Second quarter is about saving. Third quarter is about investing. Fourth quarter is about giving back. This is a totally unfair question, as I know you're expecting another child right now. Which quarter is your favorite? It's like telling you to choose your favorite kid. Ooh. But which one is your favorite, or which one is the most important for people to get right?
Yeah, I think investing. Yeah. The power of growth.
That was the right answer, by the way.
Yeah, there we go. The reason why that one is so important to me is because I think that's the one that was a discovery for me as I got older and as I learned more and more about money. And when I say discovery, is you grow up and I don't know about everyone's upbringing, but for a lot of us, it's you hear put your money in the bank, 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 and that's great. And not a lot of people give you the next step of put your money to work for you, put your money to work for you. And that to me is a discovery that I feel like a lot of us don't necessarily get. I do a decent amount of public speaking and teaching and things of that nature and workshops. And, a lot of times I'll go to people and I'll say, hey, like, how many of you have ever invested before? And, you might get a few people who raise their hand, just depending on the audience. And then I'll be like, you know what? In all reality, all of us are investors. What are you talking about? Well, if you've made $1, you've all made an investment decision. Now, whether you take that $1, you put it under your mattress or leave it in your pocket, it's a 0% return. You choose to put it in the bank and get 0.01%. That's a 0.01% return. You choose to put it in a CD or a high yield savings account. You choose to put it in the stock market, real estate, et cetera. All of those are investment decisions. And so whether you're saving or investing, you are still making an investment decision. And we just need, for me, my goal is to encourage more people to introduce themselves to the world of investing and put their money to work for them. Because unfortunately, what I tell people is either you put your money to work for you or you will work the rest of your life for money.
Yeah, or for someone else, right? And that's not necessarily the place that most people want to be. So you're talking to an audience, especially the students. You're talking to a obviously younger audience. When you have those conversations about, what's saving, what's investing, where does risk come into that? And what's their risk appetite? Because knowing how young those students are, we know that they have a really long time horizon. They can take on a lot more risk than they probably think they can because they have so much time to withstand all those bumps and bruises. But what would you say, if you can generalize, is their appetite for risk at that age?
Yeah, I think it's the majority of them are comfortable with risk and comfortable with the topic in terms of investing. I think now, because of the age they've grown up in with Robinhood and GameStop and all these different things, they're hearing it a lot more than we may have heard it on the broader channels and airwaves when we grew up. But I do make sure that we try to allow for all of our students and all of our audience to be comfortable in their relationship with risk. Not everyone is comfortable putting their money into Bitcoin, right? And that's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. And so I really try to challenge folks to make sure that they are figuring out what they want their future life to look like, along with how comfortable they are with risk, and to understand that you should be investing regardless. I'm going to go ahead and say that here. I'm not a financial advisor. Please check with and consult with your own financial advisor. Disclaimer, don't sue me, all of that stuff, right? However, you should be considering some type of investment, whether you are risk averse or very, very much so comfortable with risk. Your appetite for it will just determine what type of investments you are going to do or how you're going to put your money to work for you, right? All of our students do a virtual trading game every single week. We come in and we have to talk about the decisions that you made and all of that stuff. And that also helps you start to develop your appetite for seeing your account go up and down. And obviously it's virtual money, but again, that's literally how I started when I was in college myself. And then eventually you get to the point where you want to put your own money in it. And that's how you hopefully build a comfortable relationship with money and a comfortable relationship with investing.
And it takes experience. It takes seeing some of that, all the movement that happens even on a daily basis. You have to build up almost a callus to it so that you don't feel like you're supposed to react to it constantly. And it can be scary to watch your account go down for 3 days in a row, but you have to be able to withstand some of that in order to hold on to stuff for the long term. Okay, so you were in the NFL for 10 years and you came into the league, didn't know much about personal finance. There's a quote that you have, something like you had to make it to the Baltimore Ravens in order to learn what a 401k was. You show up for training camp, you meet your coach and your teammates, and then get your jersey, and then you like sit down in a room and they give you a PowerPoint presentation about a 401k and say that you have to contribute, or how does that work in the NFL? Because most of us will never have that experience.
Yeah. So, that's amazing question. So, all right. So in the springtime, there's the NFL draft, and some players get drafted to the team. Some players don't go drafted to the team. You don't get signed to any team on those 7 rounds, and teams will call and try to sign you to their team basically for a tryout. I was an undrafted free agent. I thought that I was a preferred undrafted free agent because the Baltimore Ravens called me, after we agreed, and they were like, we're going to give you $1,000 signing bonus. And I was like, ooh, they love me. Oh, they like me. They really like me. And then I went to training camp and the other rookies started saying, I got 750,000, 50,000, 150,000. I'm like, oh, where's my agent at? What happened? But it worked out for me. But so in the spring, that happens usually around April, late March or April. And you are just working out, training with the team. And throughout that whole time, there are guys who are being cut from the roster. Their NFL dreams are ending literally live right in front of you. They're getting injured and all those things. And then you come back in the summer in late July. And then that's when you go into training camp, preseason, and you're really fighting for a spot. So they come into training camp with 90 folks on the team, and they cut those rosters down to 53 men for the season. And so that's, 37 jobs right there, 37 careers that are different or may never happen again. Now, once you make the team, and even for us in that summer, there was this NFL Players Association, the NFLPA, and they are basically our agency as a group. of players. They represent us as NFL players and us as NFL players only. They sit across the team owners on our behalf and they say, hey, we think that athletes should have health insurance, and they should have concussion protocols, and they should have limits on practice length, and they should have retirement benefits and a minimum salary. They go for all these benefits. And so the NFLPA came and they shared with us all the benefits that they had negotiated for us on our behalf. Tuition reimbursement, 5 years of health insurance past the day that you finished playing football. And one of those was a 401k match. It's almost a 2-to-1 match that they give you if you contribute to your 401k. And when they said it to me, this was preseason. It was 2013. I was with the Baltimore Ravens, and I was an undrafted free agent just trying to make the team. And so when they said it to me, I remember looking up like, wow, that's pretty incredible. You put money into this account that's for an older version of you, and they'll put money in it that's not tied to your salary or anything else, and you get that money all one day later. Like, that's a really great investment. That's smart. And then I had to kind of zoom out and say, oh, hold on, we have practice in 2 hours, and if I don't make a tackle, they're going to fire me. All right, well, let's save this, put a note in my head of 401ks, and we'll come back to it one day once I actually make the team. And so literally I remember learning about that, and I just, went, did what I needed to do to make the team and all of that type of stuff. And a while later I came back to it and I was just like, wow, who taught my mom about a 401k? Like, she clearly didn't make the Ravens. Who's going to teach my brother about it one day? Like, I've interned at UBS. I've interned at hedge funds. I've went to the Wharton School of Business. Who was ever going to teach me about these things? And so that never sat right with me. But that's literally how I learned about what a 401k was, and is one of the major reasons why we started on this journey of trying to educate people and not just educate people at Penn, but scale it so that everyone has access to a strong personal financial education.
Well, and I think that's a lot of people's experience. They don't learn about a 401k until it's too late, right? Or it's in their first job and they don't really understand what they're supposed to do with it or what the benefits are. And I say all the time, it's free money. If you've got a match, it's free money. Take advantage of it. If you can afford to take advantage of it, do so. And when you think about your other family members, like you mentioned, who's going to teach them that stuff if they're not put in front of that same presentation that you were put in front of? So what are some of the other things besides, let's say, planning for retirement that during this process, during your teaching, during writing a book, during all the stuff that you do, athletes.org, that you wish people knew sooner?
Yeah. And even I'm going to just come back to the retirement piece right there. Literally about a year and a half ago, I did a virtual workshop. I did multiple virtual workshops for a publisher, and they wanted to educate their employees on their money, their benefits, and how to manage money better, because a healthier employee financially will be a healthier, more productive employee for the company. And on our second webinar, we did 3 of them in total. Our second webinar, 32 minutes in. And this is one of those webinars, big company, can't see anybody's face, but people are putting in questions in the Q&A section. And one young lady asked, hey, can you give me some suggestions on a different 401k account, because I've been investing in mine for years and it hasn't grown at all? I said, that's odd. Can you tell me which account did you have? Send it to me as a message privately. And she says, JPM MMA. Yep, JPM MMA. And I was like, oh, it's a JP Morgan Chase money market account. I'm like, oh, so you have it in a money market account. You just need to transfer it into the actual trading account so that you can purchase the funds or whatever investment options it gives you. And she's responded, said, oh my gosh, I feel so embarrassed. I've had my money sitting in this account for 15 years.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Whoa. Right now, on one hand, I'm so glad she had the confidence to speak up and ask that question. On the other hand, you're just like, that is 15 years record bull runs worth of growth and opportunity missed out on. That is tough. That's what makes me say we have to educate more folks about these things. That's what makes me wonder why we aren't talking about this in schools before you graduate high school, right? Because that person is all of us. That person is our aunt, our mother, our neighbor. And that is the difference between them retiring with a smile on their face versus them retiring with that forever guilt and shame and regret of just not knowing that all could have been solved through a conversation or a book. And so I wanted to emphasize that because I want people to understand that these things happen all the time, unfortunately, and all of them could be solved through conversation and through normalizing these conversations, which you do an amazing job of doing. To answer your question about some of the other topics that have been interesting to our students and just interesting to the audience that we talk about is one, I think taxes are always something that is a big shock. You know, I go, hey, what's the biggest bill you have? Our first class, we always do budgets, and we literally make our students go through live what they want their post-grad career budget to look like, right? And it's a humbling experience for some because they, instead of them just picking a number, they have to go Google the average salary range, and then they have to Google the average rent price in the city that they want to live. And it humbles a lot of people. But ultimately, the goal is to enable them to live their dreams. But then the next thing I tell them as they go through all the line items, like, well, what's your biggest bill? And some of them like, oh, this credit card, going out to eat. I'm like, take another look. Taxes are your biggest bill. And you need to understand how to work with an accountant or work with a professional to figure out if there are ways for you to maximize your tax burden, so to speak, or maximize your tax bill. That may be you contributing to a traditional IRA this year, or maybe it's you upping your allocations to a 401k. Who knows? There's so many different strategies out there, so many different things. But when I started teaching this course at Penn, which we call Life 101, I went on a journey of just research. And one of the common themes that you hear so many wealthy people talk about are taxes. And that's why a lot of them are invested in real estate and other assets and things of that nature. But taxes. And I just, at a certain point in time, I was just like, okay, well, if class one is just understanding your why and budgeting and all that stuff, class two has to be about taxes because literally everyone is talking about it. And that is a common thread between all of these quote unquote wealthy individuals.
And it takes a big bite out. And it's hard to budget when you don't know that. I remember my first job out of college, my paychecks were somewhere in the $800 range every couple weeks. And I thought I was rich because I was used to like $80 paychecks in college. So $800, I was like, I can do whatever I want, right? But once I paid my car payment, paid my student loan payments, paid my rent, I was begging my parents to buy me groceries, and I'd have like $37 left to go have fun for that couple weeks. Yep. It goes fast, and you don't realize that unless you're really planning for it ahead. So I think that's really important. The other thing you mentioned that I think is important, you mentioned the word shame. And that story about the woman who asked, how do I get my 401k to grow? Basically, what am I doing wrong? I think there are so many people who don't ask those questions because they feel like they should know the answer and they're ashamed to ask it. There is no shame in that. Please ask somebody. If anybody listening to this has shame about some investing question that they want to ask, please ask someone. You can ask me. You can ask Brandon. You can ask, I'm sure there are people in your lives that you can ask. It is so much more important to ask it than not have the answer for 15 years. So here's a question I have. This is a big ad for me. How did you manage your own money as a player when you were starting out? So I heard a story once, this player will remain nameless, about a player who basically his principles were, this was an NFL player, his principles were that he never spent a penny from his paychecks, from his salary from the NFL. He only spent his endorsement dollars. So anything he made as endorsements, that was his spending. That's what he had to use to cover his life. But his entire salary got saved and invested. So did you have any principles like that?
Yeah, well, I unfortunately wasn't making probably that much endorsement money initially when I came into the league to be able to do that. But I love that principle. And I'm familiar with a few players who have decided to live like that. For me, my biggest thing became hoard as much money as possible. There was no, there were articles that came out that said, I live off of 8% of my income and things of that nature. But for me, there was years that I was living off of less than that. I had an up and down roller coaster ride to make it into the NFL. I came in 2013. I was fired multiple times in 2013. In 2014, on week 2 of the season, mid-September, I was fired and told I wasn't good enough throughout the whole year. So for the most people, that would have been the end of my NFL career. January 1st, 2015, I gave myself 1 calendar year to get back in the league. In March of 2015, I got back to the Detroit Lions because I did a veteran combine, which only happened that single year. It didn't happen before it. It hasn't happened since it. 2,000 people applied. They only took 100. I didn't get in initially, and then they eventually let me in to be one of those 100. 2 out of those 100 people made it back into the NFL. I was one of them. So when I came back in March 2015, I had $243 in my bank account, and I signed a $25,000 signing bonus that time to the Detroit Lions, and it was hoard everything. I don't know if they're going to fire me next week. So every single thing I was making, I would eat all the food I could at the facility, but I would take a to-go plate at lunch, and sometimes I'd eat that for dinner. And literally, I would just save and stack up as much as I possibly could. And now, hopefully they don't send me a bill. I would take my waters from the facility, my Gatorades from the facility. If you came to my fridge, it would have been, you would think that this was the Detroit Lions practice facility. But I was saving as much as I possibly could because I did not know when the career would end. Now, as I got older and it became bigger than just me, it became my wife, it became my children, and we had to expand our lifestyle. Obviously, those things started creeping up. But for me, it was always live a comfortable life, but live off of the least amount possible. Save as much as you can. But for me, after a certain point in the NFL, it was just invest as much as I can. And I'm investing in multiple buckets. I'm investing in things that I may need 1 to 3 years from now. I'm investing in 5 to 10 plus years from now. And I'm investing for an older, gray haired version of me that will not want to potentially leave the house at all. And so that's how I divvied up my paychecks every single week. And most of it was just put to grow and go to work for me.
Yeah. I'll call that resourcefulness. So I think you did it right. One of the questions that I think people probably want to know, I mean, obviously we've got this book coming out from you on September 10th that everybody should buy and read, and it will be a great resource. What are some of the other resources that you've used? Maybe you haven't created. Obviously, you've had to use a lot of third-party resources for your class at Penn. What are some of your favorites?
Yeah. So one, if you want to go buy the book, go to www.yourmoneyplaybook.com to purchase it. On that site as well, too, you also can get access to life101.io, which is the course that we built at Penn. And on there's a bunch of free resources, from a book list to budgeting tools to income tax calculators and things of that nature. And for me, what I use, one, I always tell people download the apps that are out there, the CNBCs of the world, the Yahoo Finances, the Market Watches, etc. But because I have the apps downloaded and I get the notifications, I still have my finger on what's going on in the markets and ultimately what's happening with my money. And so for those of you who are trying to start to learn about investing, and even for those of you trying to go to the next level, in order for you to successfully do that or give yourself the best chance possible, you got to learn the language of money. And so by doing that, that's free. Turning those notifications on is very, very helpful, and that helps speed up my learning curve tremendously. I also look at a lot of interviews. I think that depending on where you are in life and what your goal is and what you're trying to do, I think that there's YouTube University nowadays, and I'll shout out YouTube, shout out Google, since my wife works there. And I gotta support that team, right, as well too. But ultimately, what I do, I haven't gone back to school to get an MBA or anything like that, but I watch a lot of interviews of people who are doing very, very amazing things. And I'm sitting there learning, and I'm trying to see if I can speed up my learning curve, and if I could make one less mistake here, there, or there, because now you can literally type in any subject in the world and you can get a crash course on it for free. right? And so for me, I'm looking at interviews of Tyler Perry. I'm looking at interviews of Kevin Hart. I'm looking at interviews of all of these different successful people, Oprah, and I'm seeing how they're just dropping little gems about how they structured their business or how they dealt with negotiations. And also going back to something that you said earlier, how they picked up the phone when they don't know something, and they either call a friend or they call an advisor. And Tyler Perry talks about it all the time. I will tell them in the room to break it down for me like I'm in high school. Break it down for me so that I can understand it. And I take that same approach. So I those are the things I like. I'm not a big let me sit down and read the whole book from front to back. And I know that's an oxymoron, obviously being here pushing my own book, but Blinkist, I keep it real with you, right? Like Blinkist, they narrow a lot of really great books down to the 12 to 15 minutes that you need to hear and that everybody's going to be talking about around the lunch table anyway. And so those are the things I use just to keep learning. And the final thing I'll say, Liz, is just finding your group of accountability folks. And whether that's one person, 3 people, or a whole community. People always talk about the relationships and the people you're around are what will determine your altitude for the next 5 years or so. And it really, really resonates, with me now that I'm having some conversations and debating certain things that I'm like, wow, these are some of my wildest dreams to have these types of decisions on my plate. And so I'm making sure that I'm reaching out to people that have kept me humble, but also some of them are more conservative than me with their investing mindset than I am, so that they're also making sure that I am, although I am the driver of my destiny, so to speak, and it's my decision, I'm also making sure that I'm still surrounding myself with people who can make sure that they are holding me accountable to, hey, let's pull some chips off the table here, or let's do it like this, or not everything's going to become Meta or right. Uber, right? Right. And so making sure that you have that soil around you as well too, to help you continue to grow is extremely important.
Yeah. And one of the things that, it sounds like you do this too, one of the things that I preach pretty often is make sure you're seeking out evidence to the contrary, meaning what your opinion is, what you think you want to do. And if you feel really, really strongly about it, that's fine. But make sure that you're also looking for whether it's a person who might have an opposite opinion, or it's data that might take the other side of the equation. Look for it to make sure that you're not looking at things with tunnel vision and completely blinded by the other possibilities. And I think that's really important. And other people can provide you with that a lot because they have their own set of biases. They have their own set of predispositions. And it's important to take that into your thinking. So you mentioned the course that you teach at Penn called Life 101. It sounds like maybe it's not all about money, and the title of your book ends with how to win at life. So if I were enrolling in that class, what's on my syllabus?
Now this is the secret weapon, so to speak, or the secret sauce. But I think that what you're going to get, so the syllabus is 16-week course. You go from budgeting to taxes to investing to retirement investing. We break those down into different subjects. We go to our whole student loans, credit, home buying, car buying, how to buy an appliance, right? Like there's an art to those things. We go to estate planning, wills, insurance, being entrepreneurial, right? And also nonprofit work and things of that nature. But anyway, there's a whole class list, which is great. But what is not talked about a lot about my class is it's also a huge self-esteem personality builder class. You actually get to practice networking. You get to practice pitching yourself. You get to practice your elevator pitch. You also get to practice uncomfortable conversations and negotiations. Every single class you come in to, you're going to have to stand up. You're going to have to introduce yourself to somebody new in the room. And I'm going to put you in a tough position sometimes. Sometimes I'm going to make you battle with and explain and fight for why you deserve this job over the person who went to the rival school with a higher GPA and they got more on their resume that looks great than you do. Go.
Wow.
Why do you deserve it? And we're going to go back and forth. And the goal is, although, when some people enter the classroom on day one, it's different. It's shocking. It's, whoa, why are we having these tough conversations? Ultimately, I'd much rather you practice and fail in my classroom than you go out and it's, your family's livelihood is on the line and you need a $10,000 raise or your boss is thinking about removing you from the equation, right? Like, and now you need to advocate for yourself. You'd much rather practice in Professor Cope's class than trying to pull it all together on the spot. And so we have fun with it, and it is challenging, but we also talk about things like what you really want your life to look like and what your biggest regret is. And we have our students write what they want read about them at their funerals and things of that nature, which again, a lot of sometimes it's like, whoa, what are we doing? I thought we were talking personal finance here.
Yeah.
But it puts into perspective really quickly for you what all the money means and what truly matters for you. Because I don't want my students leaving the classroom, going out and working hard to make money, to get a car, to impress their friend on Instagram or to impress their neighbor. I'd much rather them go out and be working hard for money, but they're working hard for the lifestyle that they want or the freedom that they want or the options they want to give their children, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And to be able to put that into perspective for young people early is an absolute dream come true.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, what's the greater good, right? And what's your greater goal with it? And if it's that you're using money to get to a goal, that's fine. But what is the greater goal? And hopefully it's not something like a Lamborghini, right? And right. It made me think when you were talking about one of the things that I wish people knew sooner, and I wish people got thrown into sooner, aside from finances, of course, being financially savvy. I wish many people had education on that sooner, but public speaking. Because even if you don't want to be a public speaker, no matter what job you're in, you're going to have to do it on some level, whether it's just speaking in a meeting, whether it's actually speaking on stage. You end up in these positions. And I wish people were thrown into that uncomfortable scenario much earlier in life so that when it does happen, it's not so terrifying. Because there's some stat like 98% of the population hates public speaking. I think a lot of it is because nobody has any experience with it. And then it is terrifying. And I can't tell you how many cringy public speaking moments I've had and how many times I've done things and things have happened I wish would have gone differently and how uncomfortable that can be. But I'm glad that they happened because I needed that under my belt in order to get more confident, in order to figure it out, in order to do things differently and try different things. And you're never perfect at it. You just get more comfortable with screwing it up, I think is really how it goes. But public speaking is a big thing. That finishes the bulk of it, but I want to do a couple quick answer questions just to wrap it all up. So this section we call the word. And basically I want you to think of one word that would sum up your transition from the NFL to basically CEO founder.
Tough. Yeah, I usually can get long-winded. I can explain it if you want to, but it's tough. It is tough to go from, I think the transition from sport is tough, right? But also there's so many things and places where you have to grow to be able to manage this new role effectively, that, my communication skills have to grow. If I'm on the football field and somebody isn't cooperating right, it's easy for me to say, yo, let's go. We train for this. A lot of bleeps and we get it done, right? You can't necessarily do that in the corporate world, right? There's also a lot of things just on me. I'm fortunate to be able to come into an amazing team who supports me and they embrace my weaknesses and make me so much better and stronger than I am. But, I had to take a look at my own life. And I was like, wow, really, I actually have had my whole life and years scheduled since the 4th grade. Wow. Everything is revolved around football. Like I knew when I was getting ready for training camp, I knew that meant a certain amount of my day was going to be dedicated to just training, right? And everything else came after that. But now, I got to structure the priorities myself, and I have to tell people no. And it's not no because we're playing the Patriots this weekend. It's Tom Brady, and you understand why I'm saying no. It's no because I really just genuinely don't want to have this conversation with you, and and you got to learn to set those boundaries, and that's okay. That's also another evolution, right? And so you know, and then also to be leaving something and then be doing something else that's special. That NFLPA example that I shared with you earlier, which changed my life remarkably. I'm now building that for college athletes, and there's a lot of weight in that, right? And there's a lot of potential in that. And so, you know, dealing with that as well too is tough, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And so it's forced me to grow tremendously in a short amount of time.
Okay, next segment, last segment, called the aha moment. What was the moment, if there was one, that you realized you could be the one to teach athletes, to teach students about financial wellness, financial fitness?
Yeah. Oh, the aha moment. So my rookie year, so similar to what you said earlier, I actually, a lot of folks would not know this, but I used to have like severe public speaking anxiety. And so I used to go to kids' football camps and just practice talking and giving speeches and all that type of stuff. And I share that because the first class I ever taught at Penn, I remembered there were kids lined up outside waiting, and I had my headphones on like it was game day, and I was just like sweating profusely. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, what if they call me out? What if I don't know everything? What if they ask me a question and I don't know the answer? Oh my God, you know. And during that class, there were a few times specifically where I just kind of reverted back to just being myself in conversation, and you could just feel like I just felt like the weight drop off the shoulders. And we did the budgeting class. We always do the budgeting class the first time, and you could start to see some young people's minds click of like, oh, this isn't that easy. As they were typing in their budgets, you could start to see them come to that revelation. And by the end of class, some of the decisions that some of them were going to make in a few months based on them graduating as seniors were changed as a result of that class right then, because they did the budget and they saw that, oh, me trying to live on my own in New York City off of this salary isn't realistic. Let me find a roommate, or let me do this, or let me commute back and forth from Jersey because I grew up in Jersey. That to me was like, okay, we got this. Like, we might not have all the delivery down. We might not have all the examples right yet. I'm still working on my PowerPoint presentation 5 minutes before class because this is my first year doing it. But ultimately, we just changed some lives. That's what we're in it for. Let's just keep sticking in here, and it'll get better and better and better and better and better over time. So that was the aha moment for me. Class 1, 2019, January 2019, class 1.
Last question. Who are you cheering for this season?
Oh, I can finally do this. Baltimore Ravens. Ravens. I grew up a Ravens fan. I started my career there, ended my career there. And so now it's safe for me to admit I'm always rooting for the Ravens. I love seeing great football games, though. I don't like seeing blowouts. I never like seeing a blowout if it can be avoided. But I would love to see Lamar Jackson take it home this year.
Well, the Ravens are kicking off the season this year. This episode will drop after that, but I suppose I will root for the Ravens for that first game. But after that, it's Green Bay Packers for the rest of the season.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for coming. Thank you for spending your time with us. This was awesome.
Thank you.
And again, I'm excited for your book. I hope everybody else is excited for your book, and wish you all the best of luck with it. Go get them.
Thank you so much for having me, Liz.
Okay, well, that was probably one of the best episodes that I think we've ever released. I really, really liked that one, especially because the takeaways for me are not even just financial. They're more life-based. And I think that's really important for all of our listeners. First big takeaway is about education. Dig deeper into your finances. And I think maybe the biggest thing about that takeaway is that it's hard work. It takes a lot of energy. It takes planning. It takes thought and deliberation. And it's meant to be a heavy lift because these are important decisions that you're making for your future. So it does take dedicated time to really sit down and dig deep into your budget, into what your saving plan is, into your investing experience, and just gaining that experience. And I talked about building up the calluses in investing. So put in the time. The second big takeaway is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And the idea that if you don't know the answer to something, there is no shame in asking. Make sure you're asking those questions. Make sure you're pushing yourself in whatever the arena is. It doesn't have to just be in finances. Maybe it's public speaking. Maybe it's trying to understand taxes better. Maybe it's not knowing what you want your retirement to look like. Push yourself to get into those spaces and get uncomfortable trying to figure it out. The sooner you start, the better off you will be. Well, thank you all for listening. I cannot wait to bring you the next episode very soon. For more from me, read my weekly column every Thursday on the SoFi blog or follow me on X at Liz Thomas Strat. Follow The Important Part wherever you get your podcasts. The Important Part is produced by SoFi in partnership with Pod People.
The views expressed do not necessarily reflect the institutional views of SoFi or its affiliates. This program should not be copied, distributed, published, or reproduced in whole or in part or disclosed by any recipient to any other person without the express written consent of SoFi. Each name of any organization mentioned in this program is the property of the company to which it relates, is used here strictly for informational and identification purposes only, and is not used to imply any authority, ownership, or license rights between any such company and SoFi. The content of this program is not a recommendation from SoFi to you or any listener or recipient of this program, and is provided for informational purposes only. SoFi is not providing any financial, economic, legal, investment, accounting, or tax advice through this program, or to its recipient, and you and any person should not rely on this program for any advice. Investment decisions should be based on specific financial needs, goals, and risk appetite. SoFi has no obligation to provide updates or changes to the information in this program. Past performance of any investments mentioned does not guarantee future results, which may vary. Neither SoFi nor any of its affiliates makes any representation or warranty, express or implied, as to the accuracy or completeness of the statements or any information contained in this program. Any liability for any statements in this program is expressly disclaimed by SoFi. For additional disclosures related to the SoFi Invest platforms described above, please visit sofi.com/legal.